Greetings all of you. This video is primarily about the story of the Ring of Gyges, which we discussed in class this week. And we discussed it in the context of trying to figure out whether justice is a good desired for its consequences only, or, as Socrates discusses in Plato's The Republic, whether justice is desired as the finest good for its own sake, as something within itself, and also for what comes out of it. The story of the Ring of Gyges appears in the second book of the Republic, written by Plato. The Republic is one of the longest dialogues, divided in 10 books that were most likely written at different times. And in the second book, Socrates talks to Glaucon about justice, the importance of justice, and whether justice is desired by human beings for its own sake. Now, what does it mean that human beings desire justice for its consequences? Often, some people may say that rules are there because they tell you what kind of consequences you may have if you do not act justly. So, most human beings, some may say, always act according to righteousness, not because they love righteousness, but rather because they realize that pursuing unrighteous things would have worse consequences for them than if they pursue unrighteous things. So they do good things because they are afraid of what consequences they may have for their lives if they don't do good things. And in order to prove this, Glaucon tells a story, the Ring of Gyges story. And the story is about Gyges, who is described in Plato's book as being a shepherd. We do not have many accounts of Gyges being, in fact, a shepherd in the historiography about him. To my knowledge, at least, he's not described as a shepherd. But for Plato, I think it's important that he describes him as a shepherd, because a shepherd is someone who takes care of others, takes care of his flock, or takes care of the community that he shepherds, so to say. So this guy, a shepherd, out of luck, finds a ring of power. It's not Frodo's ring, but it is a ring that makes you invisible if when he turns it around. So he realizes at a certain moment that if he plays with the ring and turns it around inside in, the other people no longer see him. But if you are invisible, then you can do certain things without any consequences for your life. So what does he do? Gyges seduces the queen. Together with her, they kill the king, and he becomes the king of the country. So in a sense, he becomes a shepherd, but he no longer acts as a shepherd, but rather he does all of those things for himself, not for the others. So normally, a shepherd is someone who does things for other human beings, acts justly, acts in a good manner, and so on. But now he becomes a shepherd by name, being the leader of the entire country, but he does so through murder and through lying. Glaucon, who narrates the story, Glaucon's point is that all human beings may act as shepherds when their actions are perceivable by others, but the moment in which they have the chance to to act unrighteously and have the highest benefits ever, we would always go there. And the lack of consequences would allow us to act however our soul may desire. There are other stories that point to the same thing. For example, in the Brothers Karamazov, written by Fyodor Dostoevsky, a Russian author, there is one of the character, Ivan or Ivan, who says, if there is no immortality, everything is permitted. And he suggests the same thing. If there is no consequences for our action, why should I think about what is allowed for me to do or not? If I know that I will have no punishment in a different world, then in this one I can act however I want. Well, How can we respond to this challenge that Glaucon presents with Gyges' story? In the fragment you have for class, you do not have Socrates' answer. And Socrates' answer is quite difficult to give, because, if I were to ask anyone, or if I were to ask you, what would you prefer not for yourself, but for your child? Whether you prefer that your child has a righteous life in which he or she acts always for the good, but is perceived by the others as being not good and has no good consequences for his actions, and is a beggar, and everybody perceives him as being unrighteous, which is the highest righteous life, let's say, because it's apparent that this person does the good not for the sake of consequences, but for the sake of the good itself. And then, so this is one life. And the other life, the most unjust life, is of a human being who is perceived by others as being just, but he in fact acts unjustly and has the highest benefit. So if those two lives are available for you to choose from for your child, which one would you choose? Would you choose the most righteous life, in which your child acts righteously, but he has an unhappy life externally, so to say, or outwardly, and is perceived by all as being unjust? Or to have a plentiful life, but act as an unjust human being? In the responses to your video, I would like you to answer primarily this final question. What kind of life would you choose, and why? Would you choose the righteous life or the unrighteous life? Not for you, because it's easy to say for you, but for someone that you love most of all, like your child. Thank you very much.